you've been exposed to large amounts of mold. The medical system is a business.
It is the quick fix. It is the Band-Aid, and it keeps you coming back. It keeps you in the system.
What should I be eating? And she said, well, I don't know. They don't really teach us about that. Or they would say, well, your tests look fine. Are you sure this isn't in your head?
The more woo-woo things I tried, the better results I got.
A pill wasn't going to help me. Drugs were not going to help me. I wasn't going to be able to heal the physical until I healed the emotional. But when you get to the other side of this, your life is going to be so amazing.
Hello, and welcome to the Evolving with Jessica podcast. My name is Jessica. I am an integrative nutrition health coach, a holistic skin healing guide, and certified life coach. In this podcast, we cover topics such as holistic health and wellness, nutrition, and spirituality. If you enjoy or gain any insight, please leave a review. This makes the show more searchable, which helps others find the information too.
Welcome to my guest, Suzanne, today. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm so excited to hear your story. Before we dive into that story, do you mind sharing a brief description of who you are and what it is that you do?
Sure. My name is Suzanne Casamento, and I am an author, and I am also a Sound and PEMF practitioner. And how I got here is all part of the story. I was sick for 7 years with chronic Lyme disease, and that led me on a healing journey where I realized that Western medicine was not going to heal me. And so I started exploring all sorts of different modalities. And one of the most helpful modalities for me was sound and pulsed electromagnetic fields. That's the PEMF therapy. And now I'm helping other people heal.
Amazing. I've heard of sound therapy, but I've never heard of PEMF therapy. What does that entail?
So PEMF stands for pulsed electromagnetic fields. And I use a device called an AmpCoil, so an amplifier and a coil, basically. And it's incredible because the engineers, the people who have created it, they were actually Lyme survivors, people who were not able to find the solutions they needed in Western medicine. So they went out and invented something. And it combines sound. So it combines different, obviously, sounds, frequencies, and pulsed electromagnetic fields, meaning, which is different than, we hear a lot about EMF and pulsed and electromagnetic fields. Pulsed electromagnetic fields are different in that when you have EEMF, why am I saying EEMF? Sorry. I know. When you have EMF without the P, so
Okay.
electromagnetic fields, they disrupt cells in a way because it's a constant disruptive tone. So, for example, if you live next to a cell tower, or if your Wi-Fi is like super strong with and those are radio waves, which are different than EMFs.
Do PEMFs, do they kind of help you against the EMFs?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So because they are pulsed and not a constant disturbance, the pulses combined with the sound in the amp coil create these frequencies that actually tune your cells to their optimum pitch, and they excite the cells, they help them breathe, and they help them dump their garbage. And so the device is filled with all of these journeys. They call them journeys, which are sort of like songs, which combine the sounds and the PEMF, the pulsed electromagnetic fields. And they use the sound curve. And, so sometimes different sounds are louder and longer and shorter. And I mean, I don't know how they make the magic that they make. I'm just so glad they do it.
Mhm.
And there are journeys for everything. So there are things that are really high level, like a general harmonizer or relaxol or headache help or deep sleep or uh, positivity or a brain reboot. And then there's a whole general detox album that gets super specific where you can detox your kidney or liver or lungs or lymphatics or emotions or love giving and love receiving or karma. Um, and then beyond that, there's an A to Z library, which is like very targeted. So um, if you knew that you were diagnosed with something like Epstein-Barr virus, or if you had an infection, you could do bacteria top hits. For Epstein-Barr virus, you can actually select Epstein-Barr, or you could select chronic fatigue, or you could select different parasites, pinworms, roundworms, topworms, tapeworms.
Wow.
Yeah. So it goes from like very high level
Uh-huh.
rejuvenating journeys to really, really specific. And it's just incredible. There's so many different combinations.
So it's kind of like healing frequencies, and that like 528, I think, is love, or maybe that's 432 and 528 is healing. But basically, like each frequency correlates to a different, I don't know, goal, for lack of a better term that's coming to me.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And each journey, which we can kind of think of as a song, right?
Mm.
There'll be different frequencies. Uh, so it will combine a few of them in order to meet that goal, if you will.
Okay, fascinating. I want to get more into the healing modalities that you actually used in order to help you heal. But before we do
Yeah,
that, I want to unpack, I want to rewind a little bit and unpack your story kind of from the beginning. So like how long ago did you find out you had Lyme disease, and what did that look like? What were your symptoms?
sure. So I was bitten by a tick in 2003. I was visiting friends in New Jersey, and I had a classic bullseye. So my back, the tick actually bit me in the center of my back, and so there were two huge swollen red rings uh, to the outer edges of my back, to the point where I couldn't even stand up straight because it was so swollen and burning so much. So only in only about 50% of people who are bitten by ticks actually get a classic bullseye. So in one way, I was really fortunate because that told me exactly what it was right away.
Yeah.
And so I went to a doctor, and I took 6 weeks of antibiotics, and I was basically told uh, to forget I ever had it. So, so I did. And that was in 2003. And in 2012, I moved into a place that, unbeknownst to me, had mold in it. And I started to get sick. And I had chronic infections. And so I didn't know at the time that it was Lyme. I didn't know that there was mold in the place I was living in. And so what was showing up for me were chronic bladder infections, urinary tract infections, kidney infections, vaginal infections, lung infections, and fungal infections. Um, and I'd go to a gynecologist who would say, "Oh, we'll try this, cream or this antifungal," or and then I'd go to a general practitioner who would give me something for an antibiotic for a urinary tract infection, or I ended up in the hospital for kidney infections,
Mm.
and there were no answers. Um, so this went on for a few years, and then in 2015, I started seeing a Chinese herbalist who did muscle testing, and she was amazing. And so she was tapping on my face, and she said, "You've been exposed to large amounts of mold." And then she started tapping some more, and then she said, "You have to move immediately. You're living in it." And I was like, "What?" And at the best at the I mean, at that point, my best friend was dying of breast cancer, and she had these two little kids, and we were trying to keep her alive and keep the babies alive, and I was broke, and I laughed in her face because, like, I couldn't move, I couldn't do anything. I was in absolute continual fight or flight mode at that point, with the stress and anxiety of that situation. And plus, I also thought, I don't know if I believe this woman. She's tapping on my face.
Right. It seems a little far-fetched.
Yeah, seems a little far-fetched.
Yeah.
And about 3 weeks later, I pulled a black shirt from one of my drawers, and it was covered in this like white film. And then I noticed there was other clothing covered in this white film. And the place where I was living, it didn't have any smells. It wasn't really, there were no signs, but I took them out into the sunlight, and the white film disappeared, and that's when I knew it was mold.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's how you
Yep.
find out? I'm guessing the sun kills it, or
Yes. Yeah.
interesting.
Yep.
So after you went home and you found that out and you confirmed it, did you go back to the herbalist?
Oh, I did. I was like, what else is going on?
Yeah.
Um, and so with her help, and then also, doing a lot of internet sleuthing, I came upon the connection between Lyme and mold, because people were talking about how mold had re-triggered their Lyme disease. And that's when I realized, oh, this is Lyme. Because I had always thought that, Lyme meant swollen joints and pain in your joints. And um, I had no idea that Lyme would attack the weakest systems. And for me, that meant urinary, bladder, lung, kidneys,
Wow.
vagina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the time that you got bit in 2003, you didn't have anything surface for, I don't know, 10 years?
Not really. I really didn't have anything surface. I mean, in the United States, we're so used to just not feeling well.
Right.
Nobody feels great. So, it was, of course, I'd have an occasional vaginal infection or an occasional bladder infection, but it wasn't until I moved into that mold that it was constant.
Right. Like unmanageable.
Absolutely unmanageable. That's a great word. Yes.
Right. Okay. Wow. So at this point, do you move out? Did you find a way to get out of the mold?
I did find a way to get out. So after my friend died, I reached out to my father. I think I was 45 at the time, and asked him for help to move. And thankfully he did. He gave me, $5,000 so I could move. And I moved into a new place, and which felt a lot better. I was really excited about, but I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker and sicker. And my hair started to fall out. I got super, super skinny. My tongue was white and furry. My big toenails fell off. Yeah, I had discoloration in my skin, like under my one of my breasts. There was this just big swath of brown skin, and then the rest was all green. And I had what I called helmet head, or actually it started with bowling ball head. It got better to helmet head eventually, but it felt like my head was a bowling ball.
What does that
I
mean exactly? I don't think
it
I've heard
was
that term.
it was so heavy,
Okay.
and my head was so heavy, and and also really unclear. I had horrible brain fog. I couldn't put sentences together. It was very difficult to work, because I couldn't construct sentences, and I'm a writer. And uh, I had horrible fatigue, was unable to get out of bed, a lot of days. I had fevers on and off, and then the infections continued.
Wow. Okay. So at this point, you're in a new place. Does the new place have mold as well?
Such a great question. So I hired two mold inspectors, two independent mold inspectors, um, who used thermal imaging cameras and, and these devices that could test the humidity between the walls. And they did air tests and swab tests and dust tests. And I mean, I was as thorough as it could possibly be. And they did say that the place tested negative. And when I went back to the Chinese herbalist, she, tapped on my face some more, and she said that I was no longer living in it. So I felt like that was good confirmation. But maybe a month after moving in, I pulled a shirt out of a drawer, and there was white film on it. So I mean, I don't really understand it. I joke that I was haunted by mold because it kind of just followed me for a few years.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing more and more about it. I feel like I've heard it's like the silent killer or something along those lines. And a lot of people suffer with that in their homes and they don't even realize it. What state was this in? I wonder if that.
Yeah, this was in California, and I was living the place that I moved into in 2012 was like right on the beach. And
Mm,
so that could have been part of the problem. It was also a junky old, like a mobile home. Um, it was junky. So, that could have been part of it. When I moved into the other place, it was farther away from the beach. And you do hear about mold more and more and more. And I think that one of the reasons is because because EMF, the constant Wi-Fi, the constant cell towers, the constant electrical fields can actually accelerate the growth of mold. So like if you think about it, you think back to the 80s or whatever, but before we had all this, constantly going on, um, we didn't hear so much about mold, at least not in the way that we do now. Now we know that that it can kill you. And now it's super, super serious, and it's happening to so many people.
mhm.
So I do think that is part of the problem. And one of the EMF experts I worked with, actually, and a building biologist I worked with, they both confirmed that that is true, that the radio waves and the EMFs do accelerate mold growth.
Wow. I did not know that. Okay, you're in your new place and you have two people inspect it. They both come back negative for mold. You go to the herbalist. She tells you you're no longer living in mold, yet then you pull out your clothes and you see mold on it. So then what do you do?
Well, so then this is great. This is a good rundown of my memoir, kind of chapter by chapter. Um, so then I hired a company called Green Home Solutions that supposedly, had this solution that they would spray all over your home. Then these enzymes would kill mold. Um, you know, and it's important to remember that every inspector was $350. And then,
Mm,
and then this Green Home Solutions thing, they came and they sprayed everything in the entire apartment. That was $750. So meanwhile, my whole experience, everything's adding up and adding up and adding up. I was in so much medical debt and just debt over Lyme, in general. So the green home solutions did not work. And it's also important to note that I didn't bring anything from the junkie trailer. The only thing I brought was the couch. I didn't bring the bed. I only brought like pots and pans and things that were non-porous. I did bring some clothing, but I also washed all that clothing in borax and vinegar and before I left, and then only that clothing came in with me to the new place. But then after the green home solutions didn't work, I got rid of all of the clothing except for like, 2 dresses, 5 pairs of underwear, my favorite jeans. And like, I mean, it was it was crazy because one of the mold experts said, well, if you dry clean your clothes, that heat will kill any mold in them. So I was like, okay. So that's what I did. So I was down to like, I mean, I had the tiniest wardrobe ever, which was fine because I wasn't going anywhere because I was sick. So, so that's kind of where that's kind of how things ended up there. Then it was like manageable. If I found, something with mold on it, I just threw it out. I mean, I just kept throwing out clothes, which was a wonderful exercise in
minimalism.
Yeah. Yes. Like I don't care about things at all anymore.
Right. Maybe that was a part of the lesson, I guess.
Definitely. Always, right? Yeah. Yeah. And then I just continued trying to get well from there.
Okay, so at this point, are you seeing other doctors? Because I know you mentioned Western medicine, and I think this whole experience kind of, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'll let you tell that part of the story. But are you seeing any other doctors at this point besides the herbalist?
So I saw a naturopath, a homeopath. I saw an Ayurvedic specialist. I saw, obviously there's lots of GPs in the mix and gynecologists in the mix because, there would be, I mean, my vagina burned for like 5 years straight. Like I would lie on a couch with frozen peas on my crotch. So, I mean, there were times when I just had to go, to a Western doctor and get a quick fix. But then, a week later or 2 weeks later or whatever it was, it would always come back. They never got to the root of the problem. I saw an environmental doctor who did what I now understand as bioresonance. I didn't understand that at the time. I was holding like, 2 metal rods, and she was watching a screen where things were coming across the screen. And she too said you were exposed to high levels of mold, but you're no longer living in it. And then she said, you have a major virus, very serious virus, along with bacteria and massive fungal infection. And so everything that she said echoed what the Chinese herbalist said.
Okay.
Meanwhile, every time I went to a Western doctor, they would say, well, your tests look fine. Are you sure this isn't in your head?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's common to hear.
Yeah. Yeah. But I started to realize these things, right? Like I'm really starting to notice like these Western doctors are not giving me any answers. They're gaslighting me. They're basically saying I'm making it up and I'm crazy. They're asking about, have I had a mental health evaluation and things like that. Meanwhile, I was seeing a talk therapist and who also did somatic therapy, which was super, super helpful. And then I just went, the more I tried, things that other people would consider woo-woo or weird or crazy, like the better results I got. So I started doing breathwork meditation, EFT tapping. I was already doing the somatic therapy. I went to Reiki. I saw a Reiki master, a shaman, energy healer, and then eventually found the AmpCoil. And so with all those things, sometimes, it would get a little bit better. And then, so healing was definitely incremental and came in shifts. But I tried everything. I mean, I auditioned to be, Charlie Goldsmith, the energy healer from Australia. They call him the healer. He had like a show. There was a reality show, one season of it, where he went and healed people. And I auditioned to be on that show. Like, I mean, it was like I was trying anything.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, to heal. And so it was a wild journey, and I certainly learned a lot.
I love what you just said. The more woo-woo things I tried, the better results I got.
Oh yeah.
Love that. Yeah, because I mean, it is kind of put down, like those type of healing modalities are kind of seen in a negative light, or they're painted to be seen in a negative light. And it's like, why is that? Because they do seem to work.
I mean, in my opinion, as far as to why is that, is because, in the US, the medical system is a business.
Right.
And, we don't have a healthcare business, or I'm sorry, we don't have healthcare. We have an insurance business, right? And so, so anytime the system doesn't want us to do something, they'll paint it as woo-woo or stupid or bad or crazy or whatever, but those are the things that work. Those are the things that helped me. And also it was, quite an awakening for me to realize that, like, a pill wasn't going to help me, drugs were not going to help me. And to realize that I wasn't going to be able to heal the physical until I healed the emotional, until I healed trauma. And so, I started to do a lot of research. I read The Body Keeps the Score. I read the healing codes. I read medical medium. I read, all the things, which really made me realize, oh, okay, that's a business.
Right.
Western healthcare is a business. Healing is something totally, completely different.
Yeah. Oh, I love medical medium. He was a huge part of my own healing journey. Yeah, that's kind of where I found a lot of answers, because I had severe cystic acne and eczema, and it was so bad on my face that when I did go to I went to a normal dermatologist, and they were just testing it to find out if it was some sort of like infection or disease, because they weren't even sure. But yeah, I did the same thing as you. I went down the same, rabbit holes of, hey, I went to a Chinese medicine doctor. I went to, regular Western medicine, and I got the same results, where it was just like, take Accutane or take antibiotics or take steroids. And it was just like, anytime I would, out of desperation, like, I had like some type of like a family baby shower or a wedding or a trip or something that I had to be at, and I would need that quick fix to like show my face, then I would use the steroid cream or something, but then it would always come back so much worse. And, it's like, it is the quick fix, it is the band-aid, and it keeps you coming back. It keeps you in the system. So,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, in the system. I mean, it's so interesting with your experiences also with medical medium, because, if you follow medical medium, for the audience, if you follow medical medium, and I don't know if the solution for you was, but with cystic acne, he believes that's strep, right? Okay, so this what was interesting was, I went to different healers, and who said, well, there's strep in your heart, and it was like, what do you mean strep in my heart? I've never heard of that, and so starting to understand. Yeah. Yes. But now I use his what do you call what would you even call it? Theories? I don't know.
Protocols?
His protocols. Well, I don't necessarily use the protocols, but when I see clients, right, and they come for AmpCoil, and
Mhm.
if there's a problem like acne, right, I run bacteria top hits because medical medium says that's strep.
Right.
So, I'm not going to run the skin protocol necessarily. I'm going to run bacteria top hits because I know that's strep, but I only know that because of him.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
like it's amazing to use him or to have him as a resource to
Mhm.
know what to target with the machine.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And to have like an N of one experiment, like
Mhm.
firsthand that this information works because
Yeah.
you've tried it all these different ways and you're like, wow, okay, I see results from this. And yeah, I mean that's what I put all my money on was this seems to be working more than anything else that I'm doing. So let me just continue to do it and see what happens.
Yeah. And look at you now. I mean, you look amazing.
Thank you. You do as well. You would never know that you were ever sick. I'm wondering, okay, so then in all these different healing modalities that you were using, you incorporated diet then?
I did. So it's interesting because every doctor I would go to, well, first of all, when I asked Western doctors what I should eat, they never had an answer. I called a friend of mine who is a nurse and asked her, well, what should I be eating? And she said, well, I don't know. They don't really teach us about that. And I thought, what? They
Yeah.
don't teach you about food? I mean, like, so that was mind
Right.
blowing. But every specialist I went to said to eat something different. So like, the Chinese herbalist said just cooked vegetables and only cooked vegetables. Um, and then I went to an Ayurvedic specialist who said, some lamb broth would really help, like warm up your insides. And so I got different, I got different food diet protocols from different specialists.
Mhm.
And there's a scene in my memoir where I was I was working with my somatic therapist and talking about what was going on and was so upset, and I said, and all I want is some freaking chicken. And she said what? Tell me about this chicken. And I said, well, they say I can't have this and I can't have that and I can't have, and I've been craving this chicken. I've been craving this chicken. So she said, well, what would happen if you ate the chicken? I said, I don't know. I haven't had the chicken in 4 years. And so she said, how about you just honor your craving and see what happens if you have the chicken? So I ate the chicken and I slept so well that night. And I'd been having like trouble sleeping. And so that was like the beginning of starting to, okay, you know what? If I'm having this craving, I'm going to honor it and see really listen to my body, because it was telling me I need chicken.
Mhm. Right? Oh, that's such a huge lesson is like listen to your body because when you're sick, then you're seeking answers out here and then you find a little bit of answers from somewhere and then it's like you only listen to those people and you stop listening to your own self.
Yes. Yes.
I did the same
Yes.
thing. Did you ever, I did raw vegan. So I did actually a 30-day medical medium raw cleanse, but I kept going because I thought
Wow.
this must be the healthiest thing if it's a cleanse and it's just fruits and vegetables. And I just kept going for months and months, and my body was craving red meat. And I
Mm,
know there had to be like iron or something. I was always cold. So there was something I was not getting. And it could have been many things, but I ignored that for months and I just started getting all these different symptoms and my hair was falling out and I was just inflamed and it was so odd because it's like I looked and felt healthier when I started just doing fruits and vegetables and then when I started having cravings and I ignored them and continued with this diet, then I started feeling worse. So
Wow, that's fascinating.
yeah,
That's
but
fascinating.
listen to your body, right?
Yes. Yes. And that was the biggest lesson of the whole thing,
Mhm.
you
Yeah,
know, to listen to
your
my
body.
body. Because again, in this system, right?
Mhm.
You know, we're taught to disassociate from our bodies. You know, we're taught to stuff down our feelings. We're taught to suck it up. Just suck it up. Just do it. You know, we're taught to ignore our emotions and 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 anything that our bodies are telling us. You know, that's why our culture has such a fixation on drinking, you know, like I mean, the minute something good happens, pop some champagne, you know,
Right.
which,
Or something bad.
yeah, or something bad, right? Yeah, then drink the wine or, you know, and this is not, I'm not in any way, shape, or form, you know, telling people they have to never drink again. But just think about it, you know, because so that's what we're programmed to do. And by doing that, we disassociate with our bodies. We disassociate um, from our feelings, from our instincts, our intuition.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's where the system wants us.
Mhm. Yeah, we're easier to control that way.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yep.
I could go on and on about this forever.
I could too.
Okay, so you got out of Western medicine and you found your own healing modalities. You were able to heal from Lyme. Now what does life look like? Now you're able to help others the way that you healed yourself?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. So, you know, when I was sick, I was really afraid I was going to die. And I had a session with a psychic and I asked her, am I going to die? You know, and she said, no, you're not going to die from this. Uh, she said, it's going to take you a couple more years to heal. But when you get to the other side of this, your life is going to be so amazing. It's going to be
Mm,
beyond anything you ever could imagine. And um, I hung on to that. That her prediction was like, I think it really got me through. I think it really got me through. And so, um, yeah, so I was about a year after I started using the AmpCoil, I felt amazing. And I had like brand new toenails and my skin was a normal color and my hair had grown back in and you know, I was gaining weight. I looked normal weight now, again. And I felt great. And and then the pandemic came and and I went and stayed with family on a mountain in Vermont. Um, and it was time to come back to LA. And I had this horrible, horrible neighbor upstairs, right?
mm,
He would stomp, 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 stomp. I mean, like the chandelier shook from this guy. And he was horrible. Like I went to the landlord and asked for help and he told the landlord, well, I pay a lot more rent than she does. You know, I mean, like it was one of the, you know, just a situation like that.
yeah.
So I didn't want to go back to that. So I started to think about, well, what could I do? You know, where can I go? And I decided that if I could work from anywhere, I should go somewhere. So I packed up and I got rid of everything, my apartment, my car, all my belongings. And I left the US with my a suitcase and my laptop and my amp coil. And I traveled for a couple of years. And everywhere I went, somebody needed help. They needed healing support. Like in Greece, there was a woman with these migraines. I mean, she couldn't move, you know, so I ran headache help on her and then a harmonizer. And then she was like up walking around. And
Wow.
I mean, incredible. in Bonaire in the Caribbean. There was a man who had an accident while scuba diving, and his knee was like the size of a football. So I ran circulation on him, and then the swelling went down and he was able to walk again. And then in Scotland, there was a woman who had just horrible emotional distress. And so, I ran the AmpCoil on her. And then at some point I decided I wanted to come back to LA, and I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help people. I'm going to help them with the Sound and PEMF therapy. So it was so weird because it wasn't like a choice. It just sort of happened. I just started doing it and then realized, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Yeah. And then last winter I wrote a memoir, and so it's called Pre-Existing Conditions, and it's about the pre-existing conditions, the things, the traumas, the generational trauma, all the events that layer upon each other to create a foundation where disease really can thrive. And it's about my experiences, obviously, some of the experiences we just talked about, navigating the for-profit healthcare system in the US, and healing from chronic Lyme. So I'm editing that right now because I wrote the longest book in the history of the world. The first draft was 640 pages.
Oh my gosh.
I know. So I'm chopping and chopping and chopping. And that's what's happening right now.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, so it's being written now. Did I read something somewhere where you have a book out now? Or is that the
I
one?
do.
Okay.
I do. Yes. So I've published two other books. They're novels. One's called Fingerprints. The other one's called Choosing Tally. And they're about best friends, 16 and 17-year-old best friends. And they're also healing stories. Both of them, although I originally didn't write them to be healing journeys, but they are. And yeah.
Amazing. Okay, and then the memoir, when can people expect for that to be out?
That is such a great question. I have to finish editing it. And then I have to go through the whole submitting process because I don't have a literary agent right now. So I have to start all over. So it could be a while. Could be a couple years.
Okay. Well, pre-existing conditions, we will have all of Suzanne's links in the description anyway, so you'll be able to, keep tabs on when that does come out. I have another question for you, but before I ask, is there anything else that you would like to share?
Not right. No, not right now. I'd like to answer your question.
Okay, perfect. My final question I ask everybody at the end is, what is your number one health tip? Whether it's mindset, diet and nutrition, physical, emotional, just the one piece of advice you would like everyone to know.
Well, the first thing is that the issues are in the tissues always. You have to clear trauma. You have to clear stuck emotions in order to heal the physical. It's never going to happen otherwise. And that doesn't mean, that you need to go to 10 years of therapy. And I'm not in any way, shape or form poo-pooing therapy. I happen to enjoy therapy, but there are so many other ways to heal and clear trauma that are much faster, EMDR, EFT tapping, neurofeedback, breathwork meditation, energy work. There are so many other ways. We're so lucky to be, in a time where there are all these ways to biohack it. There are all these ways to to do that, that don't require 10 years of therapy.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, with the AmpCoil, there are emotion detoxes on it, which are incredibly helpful and effective. So I would say, you know, get creative, think outside the box. If something sounds too woo-woo, do it because because it will help.
Mhm. I agree with that message.
I'm
One,
so glad.
yeah. I mean, and I mean, I think that's why we're here, right? Like you're saying, like we are lucky that all these things are now surfacing and coming to light, and we get to be a part of that, but we also get to be a part of helping others find it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. My favorite energy healer who really helped me when I was sick, her name is Gars Chan. And you know, she says, we came for this, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is why you're here. This is why you're doing this podcast. This is why I'm here, you know, helping other people with the AmpCoil and writing this book. You know, I mean, the book in itself will help people heal.
Right.
So, you know, read books, that too.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And gosh, that's why I was so excited to get you on here, because of you having this healing story, because so many others are suffering, and hopefully they find this story and then there's something in it, and it's just, a butterfly effect that spurts them in the right direction.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, I hope so.
yes, for sure. The intention is there, so it is so.
It is so.
Where can people find you?
SuzanneCasamento.com. It's
Perfect.
all there.
All right, great. And I will have that in the description, like I said. And thank you so much, Suzanne. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure.
That concludes this episode. If this resonated with you, please give it a rating and review. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out on Instagram. I would love to hear from you. Links are in the show notes. I sincerely thank you for your time and your presence.